Mogadishu is reeling after a deadly attack that killed at least 16. The countdown begins for DRC's postponed vote. And a vigil is held for 2 slain tourists in Morocco. Welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta. Let's take a look at other top stories making headlines. Ghana's government holds a 3-day fair for small and medium-scale businesses. And to our top story we go. A suicide car bombing in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, has claimed the lives of about 13 people and wounded at least 17 others. The first explosion happened at a checkpoint outside the country's national theater, while the second blast came minutes later at a nearby crossroad. The jihadist group Al-Shabaab has since claimed responsibility for the attack. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo with more details.
The first blast targeted the security checkpoint near the National Theatre, followed by a second explosion not far from here. Militant group Al-Shabaab has since claimed responsibility, saying it targeted security personnel and senior government officials. Saturday's attack ended weeks of calm in a city often a target for the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group. The deputy mayor of Mogadishu survived the attacks, but lost his security detail in the first blast. The explosion killed 7 of his bodyguards as well as his personal driver. A prominent TV personality, also known as Awul Dair Salat, was killed in the blast. The journalist was killed alongside 3 other television crew members while on their way to work. The blast targeted a heavily fortified zone of the city that's not accessible to public transport vehicles. Only government officials, security personnel and civil servants have access to that area of the city, raising serious security concerns as to how the militant group were able to reach that area. Intelligence forces have since arrested 2 individuals, including the mastermind of the attack and the driver of the second vehicle that detonated. City hospitals are coping with a high number of cases. Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khaire toured several hospitals in the capital, vowing to boost the government's fight against the militant group.
We call on the Somali public not to lose hope. Things will improve soon. We will overcome the militant threat with your support.
Last month, Al-Shabaab killed more than 50 people in a deadly attack on a popular hotel in downtown Mogadishu. The attacks included 3 car bombs and suicide bombers. Meanwhile, the group has lost hundreds of militants in recent airstrikes carried out by the US Army. The US Africa Command AFRICOM says it has degraded the group's attacking capability by neutralizing its fighters stationed in areas outside Mogadishu. But despite recent losses, Saturday's attacks is yet but a reminder of the security challenges facing Somalia.
Orders to show restraint as protests grip cities across the country. Opposition candidate Felix Tshisekedi urged his supporters to remain calm and wait for the 30th of December to cast their votes. The latest unrest follows this week's postponement of a long-delayed presidential election. Many in Kinshasa wonder if the election will really take place on the 30th and what will happen if it does not.
I'm requesting you to be calm. Let's wait for the 30th of December and vote to change the government. Don't lose focus of our mission. The government wants us to protest so they can cancel the election.
All right, let's get the very latest from CGTN's Leon Sayanga, who is in Kinshasa. Leon, thank you for joining us. Now, the vote was supposed to take place today. What is the mood like in Kinshasa?
Well, Kinshasa is calm like it has been over the past few days since the announcement on Thursday evening. We were able to take a drive through the streets here, and definitely several people strolling into the places of worship, others still going about their business on a Sunday. There was definitely much anticipation building up into the election or the voting that was scheduled for the 23rd, that is today. Unfortunately now, several people have actually begun to come to terms to the fact that they have to wait a little longer until the 30th of December when they'll be able to cast their vote.
All right, Leon, now, were there any updates from the electoral body since the postponement of the vote? Can you give us any insight on that?
Well, unfortunately, there's not really been much coming through from the electoral body since Thursday's announcement. We can only wait until the start of the new week, Monday, as of when we can probably have anything new coming through. But just to remind you, the reasons for which this particular election was postponed or delayed was because of logistical issues. The Electoral Commission lost thousands of electoral voting material. That, of course, was a big challenge to them, and that definitely caused the postponement. But we can only wait for the new week and see what Seni, that is the electoral body, will be coming out to tell us going into the election.
Okay. Now, at the time of the announcement to postpone the vote, were there any observers present in the country?
Yes, there was quite a number of observers here in the DRC, many, of course, from the Africa Union and of the Carter Center as well, but just as well from the Southern African Development Community, SADC. SADC, of course, has come through more pronounced on their need and their request to have this election successful, but not just successful at that, peaceful, and of course, it's their major call. SADC has put out a statement saying that how this particular election will go will definitely be a very strong point to the region in itself and how the political landscape in the DRC will be shifting.
And lastly, Leon, before we let you go, what are the opposition parties saying to their supporters amid the political tensions there?
Well, the opposition supporters definitely were not happy about the decision on Thursday evening, but they have still rallied their supporters to stay calm. That, of course, in the run-up on Friday, like we've seen before, Felix Tshisekedi, one of the leading opposition leaders there, calling out to his supporters and telling them to remain calm, restrained from any violence. If this was in any way a move by the government to force them into protests, then definitely it.
Thank you for that update. That's Leon Sayenga reporting from Kinshasa. Now to Morocco, where vigils are held on Saturday evening in the capital of Rabat to mark the deaths of 2 women from Norway and Denmark who were killed in the Atlas Mountains earlier this week. They denounced the killing of the 2 Scandinavian tourists and expressed solidarity with their families. 4 suspects aged between 25 and 33 years from near Marrakesh have been arrested in relation to the killings. Let's take a look.
Participants from different political parties and civil society organizations laid flowers and lit candles in front of the Norwegian embassy and later the Danish embassy.
As lawyers and as a society, we do not accept that such a vicious crime that has nothing to do with humanity took place in our country. As lawyers, we strongly condemn this cowardly, inhumane act that has nothing to do with our character and tolerant Islamic values.
We came here to take part as students, Moroccans and Muslims. We are here to express our rejection of terrorism, and we consider this crime as a double crime against the homeland and against humanity. We as Muslims, we reject this crime. Islam is a religion of peace and has nothing to do with terrorism.
24-year-old Louisa Jesperson from Denmark and 28-year-old Maren Newland from Norway were found dead on Monday with cuts on their necks near a village on the way to Toubkal, North Africa's highest peak and a popular hiking destination.
This crime is alien to Moroccans. Morocco is a land of peace and tolerance. This is strange to us and has shocked all of us. Everywhere in Morocco, people are speaking about this incident. We express our apologies to the Danish and Norwegian people. And the best thing we can do is to come here and express our solidarity and support for them.
4 suspects pledged allegiance to ISIL and its leader have been arrested in connection with their deaths. 9 other individuals were arrested by the Central Bureau of Judicial Investigations on Friday in various Moroccan cities over suspected connections to their killings. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Let's get you some perspective on the security in Morocco with security expert Samir Ragheb. Thank you for joining us. Now, Moroccan authorities say the men arrested for the killing of 2 European tourists may be linked to terrorist group ISIL. Is this a cause for concern for that region?
Thanks for having me. No doubt that Morocco suffered fewer terrorist attacks than its neighbors, but this not make it apart from the situation in Sahel and Sahara, and that the foreign fighter, those fighting, join fighting in ISIS in Iraq and Syria, their return make a more layer of complexity around the security situation in Morocco. I think this small cell may be the first beginning of another small cells in Morocco that may be affiliated or inspired by ISIS, in addition to the ancient existence of Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb that conduct several attacks, large attacks during 2003 in Casablanca and 2011 in Marrakesh. This, I think, the beginning, but not will be at the level in another countries because another factors in Morocco.
All right, Samir, has Morocco taken any steps to dismantle terrorist cells in the country since the Marrakesh attack in 2011?
After 2003, Morocco, the kingdom, passed a package of legislation for countering terrorism. And after this, during 2015, Morocco amended the criminal code to include the people or terrorists that join abroad terrorist cells like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and anyone that help in recruiting terrorists or try to join as a foreign fighter. This could include any illegalized any act of joining a terrorist group inside or outside Morocco. And also the security apparatus launched a campaign in all over the nation in Morocco to disrupt ISIS cells and gather the information required for anyone or any group that affiliated or try to join ISIL or Al-Qaeda. In addition to the culture level that empowering women and publishing books about anti-terrorism and the correct meaning and the correct legislation of Islam. So I think Morocco security apparatus capable to address this phenomena in all levels that make Morocco, that the main cause that Morocco is fewer suffering from this phenomena than its neighbors.
All right, Samir Rockbed reporting from Cairo. Thank you once again for your insight and analysis. All right, you are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We have more news coming your way when we return. Protests over the rising cost of living continue in Sudan. And more reaction to China's 40th anniversary of reform and opening up.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Opposition parties in Sudan say protests in the country have claimed at least 22 lives. Scores more were injured following demonstrations over worsening economic conditions in the country. Thousands of demonstrators have taken to the streets for a fourth day in a row, destroying government property. Earlier, the Sudanese government said it would not tolerate any acts of sabotage or violations of the law during popular protests against economic woes. The United Nations peacekeeping mission in South Sudan has condemned the recent assault and detention of the ceasefire monitoring team earlier this week. South Sudan's National Security Service reportedly forced several officials assessing the country's new peace deal to strip and subjected them to inhumane treatment.
The mission notes that the monitoring and verification team members and their support personnel were merely discharging their mandate in support of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan. The mission urges the immediate commencement of investigations in order for the perpetrators to be held to account. The mission also urges the parties to revitalize the agreement to adhere to the commitments outlined in the agreement and to ensure that all their forces are aware and comply with the tenets of the agreement.
Chairman of the African Union, President Paul Kagame, just concluded a reciprocal official visit to Cote d'Ivoire. President Kagame and host Alassane Ouattara held bilateral talks and signed several deals, including the exemption from visa requirements, an MOU on the organization of the Joint Commission for Cooperation, and the Protocol of Cooperation for the Modernization of the Public Administration. Kagame will also interact with business leaders operating in Cote d'Ivoire on issues pertaining to free trade, industrialization, and share Rwanda's experience in trade and industry. One of the key areas of cooperation between Rwanda and Cote d'Ivoire has been the signing of a bilateral air service agreement that resulted in Rwanda air flights to Abidjan starting in October 2016.
The implementation of our development plan from 2012 to 2015 and from 2016 to 2020 enabled Cote d'Ivoire to achieve impressive results in all socio and economic sectors. So, it is not surprising that Rwanda and Cote d'Ivoire are among top performers in the world and ensure solid and sustainable economic growth. In view of these performances, I think our two countries can be considered as a symbol of a vibrant Africa, an Africa that makes us hope and dream.
We want to build on the friendship and solidarity to Abidjan are a good starting point. Rwandans and Ivorians should visit each other more and do more business with each other. We would be there to always encourage that to happen and keep growing.
China has been celebrating its achievements at the 40th anniversary of reform and opening up. This has aroused an extensive response from various countries, among them South Africa. Cedric Froelich, the House chairperson of the National Assembly of South Africa, says China has consistently pursued multilateralism and economic globalization and shared the fruits of this with the world for mutual benefit. Let's take a look.
The significance of China opening up and moving into the new world order is the respect for multilateralism, and also realizing that as a single country, you cannot claim to be doing very well while the rest of the world is not in good shape. The statement by President Xi Jinping recognized the importance of those in the world, those countries, those weak, those who are strong, to work together for the common humanity of the world and to entrench multilateralism, so that we can improve and address the issues of unemployment and also poverty and inequality that is ravaging the rest of the world. And the significance will be seen when we see the improvement in the living conditions of the poor. And China has an important leadership role to play there, and we fully support it.
At the same time, Nigeria's former Foreign Minister Aminu Bashir Wali, who is also a former ambassador to China, said the key to the success of China's reform and opening up lies in the strong leadership. He said China's reform and opening up experience is worth all developing countries learning from.
When you look back to Nigeria back in the 1970s, and we compare it to China, At that time, Nigeria was ahead of China. Look at the contrast now. China is miles and miles ahead of us. Why? Because of the opening up and reform. And of course, the purposeful leadership of the Communist Party of China, China's path to success is a lesson worth emulating by all other developing countries of the world. Being able to plan ahead and make sure that at every step they've succeeded in marrying the variables of the time to their own developmental programs. Now, China is taking the lead in trying to promote globalization, which will affect which will affect every single person in the world in terms of improving the lot and protection and the security of our planet.
All right, let's now take a look at other international stories making headlines.
The head of a UN team commissioned in monitoring a ceasefire in Hodeida between Yemen's warring forces has arrived in Yemen's capital. Retired Dutch General Patrick Kammer touched down in Sana'a a day after the Security Council unanimously approved the deployment. Earlier this month, in Sweden, the Houthi group and the Saudi-backed government agreed to stop fighting in Hodeida and withdraw forces. The truce began earlier in the week, but skirmishes continued on the outskirts of the city. Both the Houthis and the government have been accusing each other of breaching the deal. Elsewhere, the United States' partial shutdown of the federal government is set to stretch past Christmas as the Senate adjourned for the holiday, with no deal in sight to end the impasse over funding for President Trump's border wall. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell sent senators home until Thursday. This means the shutdown will likely last at least until then. Financing for about a quarter of the federal government programs will not be renewed until a deal is made. They affect the Departments of Homeland Security, Justice and Agriculture. Most critical national security functions remain operational, but some 800,000 federal employees are impacted. Many are made to take leaves, while others are working unpaid as Christmas approaches. Many people are voicing their concerns over the matter.
Oh, I think it's ridiculous. It's unnecessary, and it's just going to make it difficult for people who need social services and the other services that are being shut down.
That's up to the politics. They need to stop acting like children, and they need to grow up and work for this country and for the world. All of those people, not just a select few. It isn't just one or two people. It's all of them. They need to wake up. They were elected by us to go to work, not to be shut down. We want work done.
Meanwhile, in France, protesters and police continue to clash in Paris. Authorities have resorted into using tear gas and their batons on the yellow vest demonstrators. One protester sprayed foam from a fire extinguisher on a riot police. The police then responded by hitting the man with a baton until he dropped the extinguisher. The number of protesters in Paris is down compared to prior weekends. Police have been clearing protest camps in the run-up to the Christmas holiday. In southern France, a driver died after his car hit a truck at a roadblock set up by demonstrators. This brings the death toll linked to the anti-government protests to 10. In Japan, the number of babies born this year has decreased by 25,000. 921,000 was the lowest figure since data collection began over a century ago. The Japanese government has said it will tackle the population issue by expanding assistance in childcare and education. But the number of newborns remains under 1 million for the third consecutive year. This is a blow to the Japanese government, whose goal is raising the fertility rate to 1.8 by the end of fiscal 2025. Jane Kyo, CGTN.
All right, time now for a short break, but here's a sneak peek at what's coming up in your business news. Ghana's government holds a 3-day fair for small and medium-scale businesses.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise. rise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. In Ghana, the government is holding a 3-day fair for small and medium-scale businesses to exhibit their goods and services. It comes at a time Ghanaians have shared concerns over the excessive dependence on foreign goods, which has had a toll on local businesses. The fair, dubbed Made in Ghana Street Fair, is to encourage the patronage of locally made goods. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Patrick Mensah is participating in the Made in Ghana Street Fair for the second time. He is a craftsman who does not have a shop due to high cost of rent. He says this fair provides him the opportunity to exhibit a variety of his goods. He is, however, disturbed by the perception that locally made goods are inferior.
Locally, people don't patronize enough because they already have the mentality that it's made in Ghana, so it's not of good quality. And that is a very bad impression, and I think some Ghanaians are getting to know that made in Ghana goods, we have quality ones and non-quality ones.
Patrick says he is determined to make things work out better, despite the difficulty in getting locals patronize his goods.
We do everything with our hands. I work with these people who are disabled, I train them, and I think I want to help also build the economy, because the more we can export these kind of stuff, then I think Ghana is going to raise up and the dollar is going to be stable.
The government under the Ministry of Trade and Industry in 2017 introduced the Made in Ghana Street Fair. This year's Made in Ghana Street Fair has over 600 small and medium-scale businesses taking part. Through the fair, the government hopes to whip up interest among Ghanaians and tourists in patronizing locally made goods. Ghana's imports declined from $12.9 billion in 2016 to $12.7 billion in 2017, according to data from the Bank of Ghana. The government says with initiatives such as this, the country will see improvement in its trade balance.
We are looking at a situation whereby we will live within the vision of our president, which says that we should live or have a Ghana beyond aid. In order for us to go beyond aid or live beyond aid, we need to accept what we have manufactured as a country, so that we don't have to bring anything in and create jobs for people, or rather on the outside.
Patrick and many of the exhibitors here want more of such fairs organized in the country so that their business can see a major boost in sales. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Let's turn to the story that gripped headlines the past week. Operations at Gatwick Airport have resumed after a saboteur or saboteurs wrought 36 hours of travel havoc. Over 100,000 travelers were stranded after drones were used to play cat and mouse with police snipers and the army. But now, what if this happened here in any of the large aviation markets on the continent? We're going to run through the regulations on that in a moment, starting in the North African state of Egypt. Here's Yasser Hakim with this summary.
To fly a UAV requires a special license, but obtaining this license is near impossible in Egypt for individuals and companies. Drones were used by the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood and other terrorist groups to locate and attack police forces after the 2011 uprising. Therefore, operating drones is only restricted to 2 or 3 companies that have a strong link to the security apparatus in Egypt. Flying a drone or bringing it into the country without an Egyptian license could get you a jail sentence and a hefty fine. Individual use is prohibited, and companies that want to use the drone for the entertainment industry, such as movies and adverts, need to rent them from the licensed companies and under strict surveillance from the security personnel. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
As home to Africa's biggest film industry, it's no surprise that UAVs are pretty popular among filmmakers, media houses, and individuals in Nigeria. However, as Deji Badmus reports, Nigeria's regulators have some pretty stringent conditions before UAVs can take flight.
Until 2015, you could just buy a drone and fly it almost anywhere you choose to in Nigeria without much of an issue. But with growing safety concerns and security threat, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority decided to issue what it calls regulations and implementation standards to guide the use of remotely piloted aircraft or unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs for short. You could simply call them drones. Now, the regulations prohibit any government agency, organization, or an individual from launching a drone in the Nigerian airspace for any purpose whatsoever without a permit from the NCAA or the Office of the National Security Advisor. Besides, flight plan must be submitted and approved by the NCAA prior to conducting the flight. Drones weighing more than 250 grams must be registered with the NCAA as well, and drone operators must obtain a remotely piloted aircraft system certificate prior to flying in Nigeria. All drone operators must be at least 16 years of age or older, and those with permits are required to follow very strict safety guidelines. For instance, permit holders are not allowed to fly their drones over people or large crowd. Drones are not allowed around the airport or where aircraft are operating. You can only fly drones in daylight and under good weather conditions. You must respect people's privacy, and flying of drones around government and military facilities are prohibited. So the rules are clearly spelled out, but then they are sometimes violated for lack of proper enforcement. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Janet Ogana was trained as a lawyer, but she is causing ripples in the beauty industry in London. The Kenyan-born entrepreneur is carving a niche for herself by promoting products for women of color.
A Christmas pop-up store exclusively selling brands by women of color. It has opened its doors on London's busy Shoreditch High Street, just in time for the festive season. Founded in 2017, Janet's List is a brainchild of Kenyan-born entrepreneur Janet Ogana. She is a former barista but decided to venture into business.
I knew that one of the challenges for small independent businesses is getting into retail space. Now for women of color, when you add the intersectionality elements, the unconscious bias, that becomes even harder. There are additional hurdles. So I had this idea that it would be really fantastic to have a mainstream central London space where people could come in, buy from brands that they've only seen online, and discover lots of other brands as well by women of color. I think people are becoming a lot more intentional about where they spend their money, who they spend their money with, and they want to have a little bit of a story as well with the brands that they invest their money in.
From African fabrics, handmade jewelry, cosmetics, cards, and food products, customers are spoiled for choice.
We have color shot cards who do, just behind me, really interesting bags and mugs and costas with strong images of women with head wraps. You know, that image I think is so familiar for a lot of people in Africa.
For Ogana, the store is not only about championing diversity, but also representing the rich and varied African diaspora living in the UK.
The one thing that I found for everyone who walks through the door, they want that story. They want to have the conversation. They want to go back to shopping like it used to be in the past. You know, not going to a supermarket and just putting things through the till. Actually coming in and having that sense of community and having that sense of discovery.
It makes sense because we want products we can relate to, and by someone who's selling them that we can relate to. There's just that trust there, and they know they have the hair, they have the problems we have, so I trust the brand.
The company also has an online store with curated products by brands that Ogana selected. She says that making her products easily available is not only good for her business, but offers a sense of belonging to her target market. Astatal, CGTN.
An Ivorian entrepreneur has formed a partnership with a French winemaker to launch the first champagne with an African name under the label Champagne Dian Diallo. The launch took place in France's western city of Reims.
Diène Diallo moved to Côte d'Ivoire from Guinea many years ago. Driven by his passion for champagne bubbles, he launched a brand with his name, targeting African countries in particular.
It is a real champagne that has been elaborated in the true champagne method. It is by no means an African champagne because there is no such thing as African champagne. It is just the first champagne with an African name.
To start this venture, Diène formed partnership with renowned French winemaker Rémy Jacques. Rémy has a production capacity of 100,000 bottles per year. For Champagne Diène Diallo, the production is 50,000 bottles per year.
Alors, Monsieur Diallo, il est passé
He created his brand. We created the packaging, and we continue to make our champagne as we did before.
Son projet de lancer une marque à son nom.
To increase the champagne market, Diène regularly organizes tasting events in the Ivorian capital, Abidjan. The events attract guests from all walks of life, all proud of their own.
In the current era, when Africans are claiming a certain recognition of their know-how, it is a feeling of pride to know that we have an African who is in the champagne business.
Diène hopes to motivate young people to pursue their dreams as well as learn from him as he conquers the champagne market in Africa with his brand. Hlonela Lupuwana, CGTN.
In the Senegalese capital, Dakar, there is only one woman who works as a taxi driver. She did not start out alone. Many have fallen on the wayside in the job that is seen as a preserve for men in the country. CGTN's Terry Wangari reports she's not about to slow down and wants to make a huge impact on the sector. Let's take a look.
Bauri Mbaye has been driving her taxi on Dakar's roads for 14 years now. She is among 22 Senegalese women who have benefited from this Taxi Sisters program introduced by former President Abdoulaye Wade between 2004 and 2008. The program intended to empower women by providing them with taxis, but so far there's only Bauri Mbaye's taxi in operation.
In 2004, there were 10 women. Then there was 12 by 2008. Work became increasingly difficult with breakdowns, troubleshooting was very expensive. The other sisters, they all had to give up.
Here, smack in the middle of the day, Buri is forced to stop. The clutch cable of her vehicle has just snapped. Fortunately, another taxi driver stops to help.
I pulled over to help her because she is a taxi driver like me. The least I can do is lend a hand to a colleague.
It was a real pleasure. I'm very satisfied with him. The taximans are united. Sometimes we have small clashes, but we always end up getting along.
At 48, Buri spends almost all of her days behind the wheel moving her customers. With over 10 years of experience, she has developed a strong customer base.
I met Mrs. Bai there. I prefer seeking her services because she's careful on the road. She's like a sister, a mother who constantly gives advice. When I have errands to run, I call her. She drives me. I like her a lot.
Although the only female taxi driver among men, Mbaye does not plan to pursue another career. She wants to be a lifetime transporter. Her goal is to set up her own garage and hire other women. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more news coming your way after the break, including South African jazz artist plays his guitar while surgeons operated on his brain. That story and more after the break.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. South African jazz artist Musa Manzini has played his music all over the world, but one performance stands out. He strummed his guitar while surgeons operated on his brain. A video of the multi-instrumentalist taken during the 6-hour surgery for a brain tumor shows him lying on his back in the operating theater, surrounded by scrubbed-up medical staff, plucking the strings of his guitar. This allowed doctors to observe which areas of the brain the jazz artist uses to play music. The procedure enabled doctors preserve those areas and restore some movement to his fingers, which were affected by the tumor. Doctors opted to keep Manzini awake in order to assess which areas of his brain were functioning as the surgery went on, thus reducing the risk of neurological damage. Manzini says he intends to take to the stage again once he's fully recovered. And French President Emmanuel Macron began a 2-day visit to Chad on Saturday. During his inaugural visit, Macron met first with Chadian President Idriss Déby before visiting French soldiers deployed with Operation Barkhane and inspecting a ceremonial military guard. Macron also attended a meeting with Military Chief of Staff and French Armed Forces Minister. According to Elysee Palace, Macron will use his visit to the North African Central country to encourage the troops to reaffirm his commitment to counter-terror efforts in the region.
Diplomatic trips by presidents are often limited to high-level interactions. However, French President Emmanuel Macron, on his first trip to Chad, made a unique statement to emphasize the value of the 4,000 men in Barkhane supporting security in the 5 countries of the banned Sahel-Saharan Africa through a shared pre-Christmas meal.
Everything was done at the Elysee. Everything is homemade. Everything was done at the Elysee. The cakes, macaroons, chocolate cakes are made at the Elysee. How many macaroons have been made? 3,200. 3,200 macaroons and 100 cakes.
On this base of Kosei, the head chef of the Elysee, Guillaume Gomez, removes out of his pocket revolver a laser thermometer. Attending to the foie gras Christmas intended for the 1,000 soldiers of the Barkhane force in Jamena, who woke up on Saturday with Emmanuel Macron at the base.
The president has not given any special instructions. He only expressed the wish that I come with the teams that can make a nice Christmas meal for the troops, so that's enough for me. I do not need more instructions.
The menu is strictly the same as last year in the base of Niamey, but the guests are twice as many. Each soldier will also receive a box of chocolates offered this time by the Elysee. This special dinner is also for Mr. Macron to take stock of the operation in Barkhane, which since 2014 has been fighting the jihadists in the Sahel. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Ethiopia may be losing lives because of ethnic-based fighting and is finding it hard and challenging to curb the violence in different parts of the country. As CGTN's Jerem Chala reports, one traditional dance instructor is using his skills to reunite people and preach love. He is teaching the dance moves in gymnasiums across Addis Ababa. Let's take a look.
In Ethiopia, ethnic-based violence has been seen in almost all parts of the country in the past few years, including the latest fighting in Moyale, and hundreds have lost their lives in due course. For Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government, division among Ethiopian communities is a huge headache. Meet Shemelis Mitiku, a DJ and dance instructor based in Addis Ababa. Bothered by tribal clash in his country, he is now using his traditional dance skills to bring locals together. And these are his students. That includes me, of course. Shemelis use traditional music and dance from across Ethiopia as a daily exercise routine for his students. These people come with different ethnic backgrounds, but still dance for any song.
As a child, I used to go to my neighbors who are Tigray and dine breakfast. Also, to the Oromos and the Southans for lunch and dinner too. We never asked who's who and never questioned our national unity. So aiming at bringing my childhood experience and togetherness back, I have started preaching that through my talent, which is dancing. We are before and learning the nations and nationalities' dance moves that can simply remind people that
I must be honest with you, this by no means is easy. But the main factor for these people here is coming together, all in the name of sports. But behind it, there is big national agenda, the agenda of unity. And it looks like they are making it happen.
It's super exciting to be here. Our instructor shows us dance moves of all nations and nationalities. He reminds us the power of love. It gives me a great joy, health and satisfaction to come here every day.
You can find Ethiopia here in this class. Ethiopia is largely represented in this country with love, brotherhood and sisterhood. There's no visible difference in religion, ethnicity and language. We look for one another when one is absent. The songs are from different nationalities and people, but we dance to the rhythm with harmony.
About 10 months now since these multicultural dance class started, Shemelis, the instructor, is happy with the gains made.
At this time, I can say I'm very successful, more than I could imagine. I'm working around 5 places in town, in gyms like Bodywise, Bolerok and Mescal Flower. You know what? People now have started getting it. They now understand that this is just more than dancing. It's about the coming together. This is something that has never been seen before in our culture.
In history, Ethiopia's unity has been endangered for both external and internal reasons, but the nation stands still, and these Ethiopians are trying to showcase the kind of bright future the country badly needs. This is one of the sports activities that Addis Ababa is seeing since recent times. As we've been saying earlier, if sports can incorporate differences, then it has played more than a role. Grumtala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
All right, time now for another short break. When we return, it's your sport news. Here's a look at what's ahead. South Africa submit bid to host 2019 Africa Cup of Nations following Cameroon's stripping of hosting rights.